In the annals of Imperial Rome, few figures ignite as much controversy and bewilderment as the enigmatic Elagabalus, a flamboyant teenage priest from the distant East thrust upon the pinnacle of power, whose forbidden reign would forever stain the reputation of an empire built on tradition and order. Welcome to Echoes of Time, your portal to the forgotten pages of history. We delve into the past to better understand the present, and today our journey takes us to an era of unparalleled scandal and intrigue, asking what truly transpired when this young man, known to history as Heliogabalus, ascended to the highest office in the Roman world. Was he a depraved, hedonistic tyrant whose 4 tumultuous years on the throne epitomized excess and moral decay? Or was he a deeply misunderstood figure, caught in the unforgiving cross-currents of clashing cultures and religious beliefs, his story perhaps warped by the very traditions he dared to defy? For just 4 tumultuous years, the Roman Empire was under the thumb of an emperor whose actions defied every Roman tradition, leaving behind a legacy of shock, intrigue, and relentless debate. His rule, brief as it was, became a crucible where Eastern mysticism clashed with Roman pragmatism, where personal identity wrestled with imperial expectations, and where the line between fact and propaganda blurred into an impenetrable fog. The title of this era, The Boy Emperor's Forbidden Reign, hints at the profound challenges Elagabalus posed to the Roman order, and the enduring mystery that surrounds his true character and motivations. Born in the vibrant, religiously diverse lands of Syria, this young man was not merely an heir, he was a devotee, a high priest of the powerful sun god Elagabal. His very identity was intrinsically intertwined with a foreign deity, a spiritual allegiance that would soon collide violently with the established Roman pantheon and its rigid polytheistic structure. It was his ambitious grandmother, Julia Maesa, a woman of formidable will, keen political acumen, and strategic genius, who orchestrated his dramatic ascent to the imperial throne. With her vision and relentless machinations, a mere boy, still in his teenage years, was propelled from the sacred altars of Maesa to the ultimate seat of power in Rome itself. But he did not arrive alone. He brought with him a foreign religion, an alien worldview, and a set of personal practices that would directly and ultimately shatter the rigid social and moral fabric upon which the Roman Empire had been built for centuries. This collision of cultures was not just a minor disruption, it was an earthquake that shook the foundations of Roman identity. The legacy he left behind was not one of conquest or stability, but of profound shock, simmering intrigue, and an ongoing, relentless debate that persists even to our present day. Much of what we know, or more accurately, believe we know about Elagabalus, comes to us filtered through the sensationalized writings of ancient historians like Cassius Dio and Herodian. These chroniclers, writing in the aftermath of Elagabalus's demise, were undoubtedly influenced by the prevailing sentiment of the conservative Roman elite. They painted a vivid, often lurid and sensationalized picture of a ruler unbound by decorum, custom, or the expectations of his exalted office. Their accounts depict a reign steeped in alleged ritualistic orgies, banquets of unimaginable lavishness and excess, and, perhaps most shockingly to the Roman mind, an unprecedented exploration of gender fluidity. Imagine the conservative Roman elite, their society built on strict patriarchal roles, public virtue, and well-defined religious practices, suddenly confronted with tales of their emperor, the living embodiment of Roman power and a figure traditionally expected to represent the pinnacle of civic virtue, participating in what they considered sacrilege and debauchery. These ancient narratives speak of an emperor who reportedly preferred to be called empress rather than emperor, who sought out gender reassignment, and who committed the ultimate affront to Roman piety, a controversial marriage to a Vestal Virgin. The Vestal Virgins were the sacred guardians of Rome's eternal flame, their purity and chastity paramount to the city's well-being and its divine favor. To violate this sacred trust, to marry one of them, was an act of profound blasphemy and political destabilization in the Roman mind, a direct challenge to the very cosmic order that guaranteed Rome's continued existence. These alleged actions were not mere dalliances, they were direct, deliberate assaults on the very foundations of Roman identity, morality, and religious belief. These narratives, meticulously crafted and widely circulated by those who sought to discredit him, solidified Elagabalus's place in history as one of Rome's most outrageous, scandalous, and ultimately reviled emperors. For centuries, his name has been synonymous with decadence, depravity, and foreign corruption, a cautionary tale of power run amok, a stain on the imperial purple. But, as we at Echoes of Time constantly remind ourselves, history is rarely as simple as the victors or the chroniclers wish it to be. The critical question we must ask, the very heart of this historical unmasking, is how much of this was unadulterated fact, recorded dispassionately for posterity, and how much was deliberate propaganda, meticulously designed to discredit a ruler who dared to be profoundly, fundamentally different from everything Rome stood for, and whose very existence challenged the comfortable narratives of the established order. This is where modern scholarship steps in, grappling with the fragmented and often biased evidence of the past, attempting to peel back layers of sensationalism and political animosity. Contemporary historians and archaeologists are not content with the one-sided narrative bequeathed to us by ancient Rome's conservative voices. They seek to understand the complexities, to find the nuances, and to present alternative perspectives on a figure long dismissed as merely mad or evil. In doing so, they challenge conventional wisdom and have developed several compelling hypotheses that offer new ways of understanding Elagabalus and his tumultuous reign. One prominent hypothesis suggests that Elagabalus's perceived madness was in fact a calculated and audacious attempt at religious reform. Far from being mere debauchery or senseless hedonism, his actions might be reinterpreted as a radical effort to integrate Eastern cults, particularly the worship of his beloved sun god Elagabal, into the traditional Roman pantheon. In an empire as vast and diverse as Rome, the integration of foreign deities was not entirely unprecedented. Rome often absorbed the gods of conquered peoples. But Elagabalus's approach was undeniably bold, even aggressive. He sought to elevate his Syrian sun god to the supreme position, potentially even above Jupiter, the venerable king of the Roman gods. This wasn't just a matter of personal religious preference, it was a profound political statement, an assertion of a new spiritual order emanating from the vibrant, syncretic East. His ritualistic orgies, if indeed they occurred as depicted, might have been misunderstood or deliberately exaggerated interpretations of Roman rituals associated with Eastern mystery cults, which often involved ecstatic practices that would appear alien, perhaps even depraved, to traditional Roman observers accustomed to more restrained public worship. Seen through this challenging lens, Elagabalus was not merely a hedonist, but a revolutionary, attempting to forge a new spiritual identity for the Roman Empire, a daring fusion of East and West that ultimately proved too provocative, too radical for a conservative state deeply entrenched in its ancient traditions. A second, equally compelling perspective suggests that Elagabalus's provocative behavior might be viewed through a contemporary lens as an early, albeit dramatic and tragic, example of gender nonconformity. The ancient accounts, even while condemning him, describe an individual who openly defied traditional gender roles in ways that were utterly scandalous to Roman sensibilities. The reports that he preferred to be called empress rather than emperor, and that he reportedly sought gender reassignment, are startling and profoundly challenging for any historical period, let alone ancient Rome.
In a society where masculinity was rigorously defined, publicly performed, and intrinsically linked to military prowess and civic duty, Elagabalus's apparent rejection of these norms would have been profoundly shocking, interpreted as weakness, degeneracy, or even madness. Was this simply a manifestation of his supposed depravity, as ancient historians claimed, a perverse delight in subverting order? Or was it a genuine expression of his identity, a deeply personal struggle to define himself in ways that were utterly alien and unacceptable to the rigid societal constructs of his time? If so, his story becomes not merely one of scandal, but one of a courageous, perhaps even desperate attempt to live authentically in a world that refused to acknowledge such possibilities and which responded with revulsion and violence. It prompts us to consider how history judges those who do not fit neatly into predetermined societal boxes, and whether condemnation is sometimes merely a reflection of societal discomfort with difference and an unwillingness to understand.
A third, and perhaps most politically charged perspective, posits that the conservative Roman elite, deeply uncomfortable with Elagabalus's Syrian origins, his foreign religion, and his unconventional lifestyle, actively exaggerated his transgressions, embellishing and fabricating where necessary. They sought to demonize him, to paint him as an unfit ruler whose very presence defiled the imperial office, thereby justifying his eventual and brutal removal from power. Elagabalus was, after all, largely a product of Julia Maes's ambition, a boy elevated to an unimaginable position not through traditional Roman channels, but through military force and political maneuvering. He was an outsider, both culturally and religiously, an Eastern presence on the Western throne. The Roman Senate, the established aristocracy, and crucially, the Praetorian Guard, the very instruments of Roman power and the ultimate arbiters of imperial fate, would have viewed his reign as an affront to their traditions, their authority, and an illegitimate imposition from the perceived periphery of the empire. His scandals, whether partially real or entirely embellished, provided the perfect narrative for his enemies to rally against him. It made his brutal assassination by the Praetorian Guard not just an act of political violence, but a supposed righteous correction, a restoration of Roman values and order. In this view, Elagabalus becomes less of a depraved tyrant and more of a tragic political pawn caught in a vicious power struggle, his personal eccentricities magnified and weaponized by those who sought to reclaim control of the empire and restore what they saw as its rightful identity. At Echoes of Time, our mission is to journey into the heart of ancient Rome, sifting through these layers of historical accounts and archaeological evidence, attempting to unmask the true story behind the boy emperor's forbidden reign. This intricate process involves not just rereading the ancient texts of Cassius Dio and Herodian, but critically analyzing the biases of their authors, understanding their political motivations, and comparing their narratives with other forms of evidence. Scholars meticulously examine the language used, looking for rhetorical flourishes that might indicate propaganda rather than objective reporting. Archaeological discoveries, though sometimes sparse for periods of such rapid political turnover, can offer tantalizing glimpses into the material culture of the period, potentially corroborating or contradicting written accounts. For instance, the presence or absence of certain religious iconography in public spaces, or the layout of specific architectural projects attributed to Elagabalus, might provide crucial clues about his religious reforms and their reception. Numismatic evidence, the study of coins, can reveal how he wished to portray himself to the empire. Modern scholars employ interdisciplinary approaches, drawing on fields such as sociology, anthropology, and even psychology to re-evaluate Elagabalus's behavior within a broader cultural and historical context. They challenge conventional wisdom, seeking to understand the complexities of power, religion, and identity
in one of history's most fascinating and turbulent periods.
They recognized that what was scandalous to an ancient Roman might be viewed very differently through a contemporary lens, and that historical judgments of madness or depravity often reflect societal prejudice and political expediency rather than clinical diagnosis or objective reality. They delve into the intricate political dynamics of the Severan dynasty, understanding the formidable ambitions of women like Julia Maesa and Julia Soaemias, and the constant ruthless struggle for influence and survival within the imperial court. The very act of questioning the established narrative is a profound scholarly attempt to bring clarity to the past, to find the human story beneath the layers of sensationalism, political maneuvering, and cultural condemnation. Ultimately, unmasking Elagabalus means navigating a treacherous landscape of historical interpretation. It means acknowledging that absolute, singular truth may remain forever elusive, but that a more nuanced, empathetic, and multifaceted understanding is always within reach. We may never definitively know the full extent of his personal beliefs or intentions, nor precisely how much of the sensationalism surrounding his reign was rooted in verifiable fact. But by exploring these diverse and compelling hypotheses, by daring to challenge the centuries-old narrative, we gain a richer, more complex picture of not just Elagabalus himself, but of the Roman Empire at a critical juncture, an empire grappling with its own identity, its cherished traditions, and the ever-present tension between conformity and revolutionary change. So, as we reflect on this remarkable and controversial figure, we are left with profound questions. Was Elagabalus a daring religious revolutionary, attempting to reshape the spiritual landscape of an empire, only to be crushed by its conservative forces? Was he merely a political pawn, a boy emperor manipulated by ambitious relatives and resentful elites, whose eccentricities were then weaponized against him? Or was he simply a boy, overwhelmed by unimaginable power, struggling with an identity that defied the rigid expectations of his world, whose every unusual act was then magnified into scandal by a disapproving establishment desperate to maintain the status quo? The echoes of his forbidden reign still resonate through the centuries, challenging us to look beyond the surface, to question the accepted narrative, and to find the humanity in history's most reviled figures. His story is a powerful reminder that history is not just a collection of facts, but a tapestry woven with interpretations, biases, and the enduring struggle to understand those who dared to be different. Join us again on Echoes of Time as we continue our journey through the ages, where every discovery is an echo of humanity's great history. Don't forget to subscribe to Echoes of Time and hit the notification bell so you never miss our historical explorations. As we close this chapter, we are left to ponder. Can we ever truly unmask a figure so thoroughly veiled by the judgments of his own time? Or will the boy emperor forever remain Rome's most scandalous and perhaps most profoundly misunderstood ruler?